This is the Education and Training Foundation Essential Digital Skills Case Studies webinar, integrating essential digital skills across the curriculum. Welcome to our webinar today, and welcome if you are watching the recording, which has been made available as a bookable event. If you are participating in the webinar today, it really helps us if we can see your full name on screen, because that enables us to send the slides to you after the session is finished today. And we will also send out a link to the recording. As it's being recorded, if you want to turn your camera off, that's fine, don't worry about that. And if you would mind using chat for questions, that's also really helpful. So our outline of our session today is that after some introductions, we'll be having 3 presentations from 3 different organisations, and after each presentation there will be a question and answer session. If you can put questions in the chat, that's great, and if we have time we will ask people to unmute and chat with us. The session will finish at 3 o'clock. So my name's Mary Moss and I'm one of the facilitators today. My background is in adult and community learning. I used to be an ESOL teacher and an ICT teacher, and then I moved into various quality management positions, and I have been working on the EDS CPD support programme for the last 2 years. And my co-facilitator today is Dawn Buzzard. Dawn's got extremely wide-ranging experience in FE and in educational technology, and she has been working on the EDS support programme since its inception. So today we're going to hear from 3 of the 8 organisations who have comprise our EDS case studies. Now you can read all of those case studies on the ETF website, and we can also find a conversation about them on the EDS community of practice. So if you'd like to know more about the case studies you're going to hear about today and any of the other case studies, then please do have a look at those various places online where you can find out more about them. So today our 3 case study organisations are Weymouth College, and we're very pleased to welcome James Foster and Leslie Kellett, who are going to talk to us about the way that they've prepared their staff for the delivery of EDS and upskilled them in educational technology. Then we will hear from Alex Bates from Essex Adult and Community Learning about the work that she has done preparing ESOL learners for EDS and the integration of EDS across their provision in Essex. And then David Coleman, Laurie Lawrence and Nilupa Rahim are going to talk us through the course that they have delivered with ESOL learners in mind. So I'd like to move on now to invite our first case study presentation, and that is James and Leslie from Weymouth. So if I could ask you to unmute James and Leslie, and we'd love to hear about your experience of delivering staff development.
My name's James Foster. I'm Head of Academic Studies and Quality Improvement Manager at Weymouth College.
And hi, I'm Leslie Kellett and I'm a Quality Improvement Coordinator also at Weymouth College.
So what we really want to talk to you about today is how we used the Enhance platform to help us upskill our staff, but also really to open up avenues of other digital forums and digital platforms that we could use to improve the digital skills of our lecturing staff. So I've got it really under 3 headings, and the first one was really describe what happened. And so the COVID pandemic for us made the college look at its approach to digital learning. When it was face-to-face, yes, digital learning was there, but COVID really put it to the forefront of our minds, and we had to provide training to improve the digital skills of our staff, and we wanted to promote the pedagogy behind effective remote and blended learning. And you know, for teachers, this is really about taking a risk and trying something new, and if it doesn't work, try something else. But it's also for us to look at how effective these digital tools can be in the delivery of learning. So we realised that our academic staff did not possess the necessary skills to deliver high quality online learning. So that was really our base point. And for us, for Leslie and I, you know, we think that digital pedagogy is an attitude. It's an attitude to try something new and assess its effectiveness. And initially, Leslie and I signed up to the enhanced platform, and we completed some modules. And when we were completing these modules, the idea came that actually we could roll this out to the wider academic staff within the college. So what we did is we looked at it, and the enhanced platform, it offered this 12 bite-sized modules that our lecturers could do. So we thought, okay, we could get the staff to do this, but what we wanted our staff to do was also to try other things. So we got them to sign up to the enhanced platform. We got them to try the 12 bite-sized modules. And then what we did as well is in the afternoon, we promoted digital pedagogy. So getting them to take a risk really by asking staff to look and to create a tutorial video by using Google Screencastify and share this with the college through our quality of education portal. So really by the end of the day, all academic teams had made a video on things like Flipgrid, Nearpod, Microsoft Forms, Google Meet, Kahoot and Socrates, Google Forms, plus they had this experience with the EDS enhanced platform. So lessons learned, Leslie.
Yeah, so at the start we got our staff to do a self-assessment, so that was part of it as well. So they all went off and did that, and that helped us to recognise the skills that our staff already had, and then the skills they needed to develop, because we had no idea at that point. When COVID hit, we had no idea actually what the digital skills of our staff were and how they were going to deliver remotely. So the self-assessments, we got them to do that first. We set it up, we thought we set it up so that they could then we could then see those skills. Unfortunately, we didn't realise that staff didn't necessarily have to log in to do the self-assessment. So we thought all this information was going to come into us, but actually what happened was they weren't logged, some of them weren't logged in when they actually did the self-assessment. So when we went to go and actually have a look at the results, they weren't there. So that was certainly one of the lessons we learned from this. That's certainly something, if anyone else is going to use that, just make sure your staff are actually logged in before they do the self-assessment. So that gave us a really good idea of the digital skills. We had to talk to staff about that, and we realised that obviously we can now do the self-assessment again and just make sure they're logged in. So we have asked if we could do that again, but we sort of think that might tip staff over the edge possibly at the moment by asking them to do something all over again, but it's something that we're certainly looking at doing in the future. So we also, instead we created a survey to assess the digital skills of staff, and that started for us to identify things that staff were really confident to do and things they were really struggling with. And I think working in quality, myself and Jim, and both as teaching staff as well, we were realising that we were upskilling ourselves quite quickly trying to keep up, and that we were assuming that other staff across the college were doing the same, and that helped us to realise that actually that wasn't necessarily the case. And I think what we did realise though positively was that staff are really, really keen to learn these digital skills, but they just didn't know where to start, and they just needed that support in place to enable them to do that. So once we started to have an idea of what it was they were trying to do and what it was they weren't confident in, we could then start to see what the skills was they actually wanted. And also it was really nice when we got them to each do one area, one platform. It was really good because staff were teaching other staff how to use things. So things like Flipgrid, for example, a lot of staff had never used Flipgrid before. So that team then had to learn how to use Flipgrid and then demonstrate it to other staff across the college. And then we put that onto our Moodle site so that everyone else could access that information as well. And that's still there now for them to access. So we're using staff to teach each other, and that worked really, really effectively.
So the ongoing CPD, so just to really let you all know that Leslie and I have found this really useful this year, because we're both at the final stages of completing our advanced teacher status, and we've been able to use this digital journey that we've gone through to help us write certain elements, and it's also helped us it's also helped us to write our improvement projects. So the ongoing CPD really that came out of this is that we set up an EdTech best practice group. So this is where staff who are passionate about EdTech meet up and share ideas. And what we do is we do this on the Microsoft Teams platform. And what we do is we record the meeting, because the meeting is actually the resource itself. The staff come along and they show off, things like sort of Microsoft Forms, using PDFs on Jamboard. We record that, and that then goes onto our quality of education page. And there you've got a quick resource that staff can use. And these meetings are no longer than half an hour. So we also worked, this led us into looking at other things. And we were part of the EdTech collaboration scheme, where we've teamed up with United Learning and West Suffolk College, and they're providing us some external CPD through the EdTech Best Practice Group Forum. So the one that we've got coming up this month is strategies for hybrid delivery through Microsoft Teams. We're then going to be looking at Book Creator and Nearpod, and then we're going to be looking at these Teams updates. But also as well, we're very fortunate in the collaboration that we have done with other colleges, that we got involved in something called a TRIP project, which is it's a teacher regional improvement project, and it's funded sort of through the T-level offer. And what we've been doing is we're on a project at the moment which is coming to an end, and it's about using virtual reality in construction. And what the aim was, it was to allow students to engage in immersive technology using a smartphone and a basic VR headset, because VR for a lot of people is just unreachable because they can't afford it. So if they can do it on their smartphone and a cheap headset, and we could bring that into the classroom, then we could use virtual reality in such a way that it's inclusive. So what we've done is we've created a number of 360 videos and a guidebook, and this will be launched in December. It will be shared nationally via the ETF website. And just because we started it in construction doesn't mean that this can't apply to other areas such as health and social care, catering. So that's something really exciting that we've been doing. And also as well, I'm really pleased to announce that we've been awarded an EdTech reflective exploration project by the ETF, and I'm going to lead on that with Leslie, and we're going to be looking at digital pedagogy around hybrid learning. So really just to say, if we didn't, it was almost like we stumbled across the enhanced platform because it was mentioned to us by a governor, and then we looked at it and it just opened so many other doors for us. So I think we just have taken it further. And yeah, that's us really. And I'd just like to say thank you for inviting us to this webinar. We're really pleased to share our experiences with you.
Well, thanks very much, James and Leslie. It was really interesting to hear about the way that you went about upskilling your staff, and what an amazing range of software and such like that they've got involved in. I really like the idea of getting people to create their own video, and that consequence of staff teaching other staff what they've learned. It sounds really good. Congratulations on your reflective exploration project, and we look forward to finding out more about it. And it's also really good to hear that you've had such an excellent experience with the enhanced platform. And if any of our participants today would like to tell us about their experience or make any comments, then feel free to pop any questions in the chat. So I'm just going to pause for a minute. So if anyone would like to ask James and Leslie something specific about the way they upskilled their staff, it's really good to hear that staff are very keen to learn digital skills. I'm not sure if that's everybody's experience in all organisations. If anyone would like to comment, that'd be fine. Have we got any questions coming in, Dawn?
So there's literally just one question at the moment in the chat pane, which is from Raki. Do you want to open your microphone and ask directly, Raki?
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I was just wondering, was there any pushback from the staff, like as in did you have any members of the staff unwilling to learn the digital skills, or reluctant in a sense to learn something different?
Yeah, I mean, how we worked our way around it was part of a staff development day. So the whole focus of it was upskilling staff. And yes, within teams there were people that were reluctant, but it's just really trying to bring them on board. And I think, you know, there will always be staff that are maybe frightened of digital pedagogy. And I just think really it's about us trying to put it out there, trying to promote it, and trying to work with those staff. So, you know, they become digital enthusiasts rather than people that are scared really of using the technology. So yeah, there are some, but mainly we do try to win them over.
I think also the fact that we were getting staff to teach each other, I think that worked really positively as well. So it wasn't just us leading it as the quality team. So that worked really well. And interestingly, on the day we had staff coming up from construction who can sometimes be, they're really, really busy, obviously, particularly at the moment. And they were actually being really positive about the day and saying that they'd been doing loads of the modules and found them quite interesting. I've been chatting about it in the office. There was lots of positives. But as Jim said, there was obviously a couple of staff that are always reluctant about what that actually means.
I think Alex's suggestion is that you should pay them.
Yeah.
Not so much my suggestion, just a question really, because, you know, a lot of the issues that we had around CPD and around, you know, upskilling for digital delivery was that, you know, there's quite a lot of different types of contracts, sessional, you know, annualized. I don't know what your staff is like. You kind of answered my question in the sense of, you say you did it as a staff training day, which I assume is part of their obligation. So that's fine. But, you know, where we've already got quite a lot of mandatory training for other bits, there's a big question over how much can we actually pay them to do. So that caused a little bit of what you say pushback there in terms of, oh, I'm not going to do it because I'm not going to get paid. You know, so there's always that question, isn't there?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Thanks, Alex. It's a serious point. I think we've got a question from Laurie. Do you want to ask your question, Laurie?
Yeah, I was just interested in the very interesting project. How you sourced or came upon the VR elements? Where did you get that from?
Okay, so basically what it was is there's a certain amount of money, a pot of money available for something called trip projects. And then what you have to do is you have to think of an idea that you would like to put in for this trip project. So the idea that we had was about bringing virtual reality into construction. And when we put that bid in to the Teacher Regional Improvement Project people, we've worked collaboratively with Gloucester, Truro and Hales Owen. So we worked with 3 other colleges, and basically we won the money for this bid. So what we were then allowed to do is we engaged a professional filmmaking company to make these 360 videos. So they've made them. So that's the resource that we've got. And then we're going to produce the guide, and then we're going to share that to every FE college across England, wherever it wants to go. So that's why we were given a reasonable amount of money to do it. And we were actually in Hales Owen yesterday, and we were sharing the videos that we've made, and they look absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, really good.
So,
but also, yeah, we purchased the headsets from that money as well, but they weren't actually as expensive as, I'm not sure if you, Jim, know, as expensive as we thought they would be, to be fair.
So initially, for watching the 360s, you can get the basic headset, which is about £6 off Amazon. So we bought 20 of those per college, and all the student does is just slot their phone into it, and the video is uploaded onto YouTube. All right, so, and then basically they just put it in and they can watch it, and then basically it's like they're in the room. It's a 360-degree view. It's really amazing how it works. And that was the reason why we just want to make it accessible, because otherwise you can spend thousands of pounds on these headsets, but to do it cheaply with mobile phones, to make it open to all types of students was really the main point of the project.
So we thought we could use it for placement. So in regards to T levels, it's about preparing students ready to go out into those placements. So construction's a really good starting point, because students need to be prepared before they go onto a building site of the health and safety factors, so they can see those health and safety issues before they even get to the building site. So we're hoping that employers will then recognise, you know, we're trying to work with them to prepare students, and hoping that's the positive side of it.
Great. It sounds really exciting. So we look forward to being able to invite you back to tell us more about it in the future. So
Thank you.
I'd just like to say a big thank you then to James and Leslie for coming along today and sharing their experience with us. It's been really interesting to hear. And just to remind everybody that if you want to read more about the Weymouth case study, then you can find it on the ETF website. So I'd like to move on to our next presenter. And say welcome to Alex Bates, who is a curriculum lead for ESOL at Adult and Community Learning Essex. So Alex, if you'd like to start.
Hi, thank you, Mary. Hello, everybody. Nice to see you. Nice to see that there's quite a lot of ESOL practitioners here. I'm just really here to, you know, go back over what we have been able to do relating to ESOL and EDS. So last year, as EDS was launched, you know, the recognition that ESOL mustn't be left behind came to the fore, and we became very interested in how we could bridge the gap between making sure that ESOL learners were able to access the entitlement. And in that work, we have, you know, been able to develop a course to allow ESOL learners to build their foundation digital skills in order to access their, let's say, mainstream EDS Q courses, which are now being offered. But today I just really wanted to talk about some of the other sort of 3 points really that have come out of the work that is ongoing within our team, and will continue to be ongoing, I would say, over the next year, you know, 1 or 2 years, you know, before it really, I think, becomes a more fluent thing. Really, so sort of 3 aspects really of it. One is just developing the conversation. So making sure that from last year, we've been in all of our team meetings, in more service-wide stuff. So making sure it comes out of just being in the ESOL meetings and the ESOL conversations, that there is an awareness of EDSQ generally as an entitlement, but also that we are making sure that the idea of embedding digital skills into general teaching,
in a meeting, was that okay?
As we have done with maths, obviously, and literacy throughout education, you know, for a long time now, that is becoming just part of the general conversation. And obviously, where in COVID everything was just thrown into such sharp focus with the need for digital skills, and everyone became aware that some people were being left behind with their digital skills, where we were trying so hard to get everyone to online classrooms. And yes, a lot of the ESOL cohort became clearly in focus that they did lack those digital skills and there was a need there. So really promoting that conversation about the fact that embedding digital skills in general teaching is as important now as you know, as maths and literacy has. It's a, you know, that it is a role that we have got as educators, as it becomes just such an essential part of life. So we've really worked on making sure that is just continually bubbling away, so that staff do not feel that it is something that is additional to, they don't have to make extra effort to create new resources necessarily. It's about just building the confidence that what you do in your lessons can underpin digital teaching by possibly adapting the type of task that you do. So that kind of thing, but also increasing the conversation with learners about what is available to them. So increasing the awareness that they can, in fact, now access digital skills qualifications in the form of EDSQ. It's an entitlement. So where obviously with ESOL courses, there's still that paywall to a lot of learners, trying to encourage them to understand that a digital skills qualification could be something that is free and is entitled to them. And you know, and some of the foundation courses the foundation course that we've set up is a step towards them being able to access that free entitlement. So really, yeah, just making sure that that is becoming part of the general conversation that we have. And that's really going well now. And we've had CPD specifically designed for designed for staff on how to embed digital skills within their teaching. We've done that for the ESOL department, but also for the whole of the organisation. And that was received really well. I think what's quite interesting coming out of that is that there can be, when you start thinking about it, when you start talking about it, there can be a bit of a moment where people think, oh, they start thinking that you're teaching digital skills and not embedding digital skills. So that's always something to overcome in that conversation, I think, that you're not asking people to teach digital skills, but to embed it. So yeah, we had a few light bulb moments in that CPD where staff just realised it's actually quite simple. It's just really saying that maybe in an ESOL class before, where you might be talking about writing an email, for years we might have taught them the format for writing an email on a bit of paper. So they may have, you know, a task would have been, oh, look, let's practice email writing on a bit of paper. But actually, you know, the way we work now is that it's fine. You can do it on a phone. You can send it directly to the teacher now, and they will check it. Maybe we can all look at it as that sort of thinking, rather than thinking it's like, oh gosh, you've now got to plan in how to teach the 5 areas of digital skills. So that's been really good. The next point I just wanted to talk about was improving access to assessment. So that's been an interesting area in terms of ESOL learners and how to assess them, how to assess ESOL learners for digital skills courses, because it goes with the language level as well. And, you know, is it possible that they can go and do a general ESOL, IT assessment, and looking at that? And we've been tweaking a nice, very simple, I was going to share it actually, but I didn't put it in the slide, unfortunately, sorry. We've been tweaking a nice, really simple digital skills assessment for foundation digital skills, really basic digital skills, to really try and pick out our learners who probably don't know what, you know, very basic parts of, you know, computers or you know, basic stuff that would be needed to be in place before they can access EDS Q. And so just like tweaking a good assessment that we can just really discreetly deliver as part of the general ESOL assessment in order to identify where those digital skills are. And that's come on quite well, because at first it felt quite clunky and a bit more just paperwork, but now we've got a really nice little one that we're probably gonna, well, at the moment it's still just a single sheet of A4, but we use an online assessment, initial assessment form that next year that will be part of. So it's like streamlining the assessment process as well. And then lastly, which is probably the biggest area that is of interest and developing, is the cross-curricular side of it. So not only have we created this separate, you know, foundation digital skills course to get learners into the EDS courses, so that is taught specifically by an ESOL tutor who has got good digital skills, but also it's really about moving over into making sure that IT staff are upskilled to ensure that they know how to cope with an ESOL learner if they were to find them in their assessment or in their course. And that's really, I'm finding now, really coming to the fore, because where we try to capture really basic digital skills learners with possibly quite low level English as well, or ESOL, that's fine. We can put them into this specific course and help them like that. But where that's not possible, where possibly their digital skills are already, you know, able to get them into an EDSQ course or even beyond that, to be honest, how do we help the IT tutors who have traditionally felt quite intimidated by that? And that's coming on now quite rapidly, which is really nice. And so lots of cross-curricular working with between the departments, which is for me a real success story, because it is, you know, being able to not put a barrier for ESOL learners by saying, oh, you can't do EDSQ until you've got this level of ESOL, which is that has to stop, because it's not feasible or viable that we're going to be able to teach all ESOL learners separately for all of the other things that they want to be able to access. And essential digital skills really being, in my view, probably the most important one at the moment, although obviously we do continue to assist maths tutors in differentiating for ESOL and other areas as well. So that's a really positive thing. So yeah, so that's the sort of three main areas that have come out of doing the case study work last year, I would say. And it's still ongoing as well. So
that's great, Alex. Thank you very much. It's really interesting. And I know that there is a lot of interest, particularly in ESOL learners and digital skills. So your experience is really valuable. We had a question from Danielle asking if you would be willing to share a copy of your assessment.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, however we can do that after this.
Yeah, if you want to let us have it, and then we'll make it available.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
To everybody, if that's okay with you.
That's fine. Yeah, brilliant.
Thanks. I don't know if anyone's got any questions, or if they want to pop them in chat. Oh, yes, Danielle, do you want to unmute and ask a question?
Yes, let's see if I can get my camera on as well. I was quite interested, I guess, in your context. It's so interesting to see how other colleges are doing it. But yeah, when you gave the example of, well, we're not really teaching digital skills, we're just embedding them. I found sort of as an ESOL tutor, there has been actually quite a lot of having to teach some of the digital skills. And actually I'm still online now. So our college has decided to keep some classes fully online, just because we realised we were reaching mothers with babies and young children. And obviously there are still people who are vulnerable and don't want to be in person yet. So we're sort of a Google college, we're using Google. So things I've, sort of have to teach how to use Google Classroom and Meet, but also things like word processing skills, teaching them, to use Google Docs and things like that. And I do find it is quite hard to draw the line between, I could end up spending all my sessions teaching technology and not teaching any English. So yeah, I don't exactly know what my question is, I suppose, but it's and how I'm trying to do it this year is, obviously there's some tech that has to be taught up front, like using Meet and Classroom, and then just drip feed it in. Not, don't overwhelm them all like I did last year. Drip feed it in session by session over the months, but obviously so that there's plenty of English as well. Is that sort of a similar approach that you've used, or?
Yeah, I do know exactly what you mean in terms of, like, if you are teaching online, then yeah, in a sense you are having to teach the skill of being able to do the thing that you need them to do to learn online, but you are also embedding what is then termed the 5 areas of essential digital skills, which then, if they can do a course in that, becomes a qualification. So I think that's that's the sort of, like, when we're talking to staff, it's like, when you think it shouldn't be this complicated, but it's like there is that difference between the embedding of digital skills, which is kind of what you're talking about, and you're doing so much of it when you're teaching online. It's like you're doing so many of the things that is part of the EDSQ. You're doing that, but it's like then sort of when you're maybe sort of talking to staff about embedding digital skills, you're saying, oh, well, there's these 5 areas and you can embed them like this. And they're like, well, I'm doing that. And it's like, yes, you are, but what we're trying to get you to understand is that also constitutes the foundations of a qualification, which is also now available to them if we can get them into these courses. And that's the thing. It's like you are embedding those 5 areas absolutely so much when you're teaching online, but also what we're trying to get staff to realise now, and any way you do it in teaching is in classroom teaching as well. You can embed all of those skills.
Yeah.
And you probably were already before anyway, depending on how you taught. But then the idea is that it actually can lead into a qualification to which they are entitled, and which is free. And that makes them a nice, it'll get them a qualification basically. So.
Yeah,
Lovely.
thank you. That makes sense.
Thanks, Danielle. I think at this point, if I can, I'd just like to ask Leslie from Barnsley ACL if she'd like to comment on what they were doing there, because in terms of the things that Alex has been talking about embedding skills across the curriculum, I know that in Barnsley ACL you did a lot of that, and you've devised a way, haven't you, of mapping your courses and the skills. So could you just comment very briefly on that, Leslie?
Yeah, I think from our side, we kind of started where what I'm hearing from both parties I've just watched, where your initial starting point is staff CPD, and as a service we kind of threw ourselves right in at the beginning and did a bit like I'm not sure where Leslie and that other gentleman came from, but we kind of did the same with there. We used ETF platform, did self-assessments, but and I kind of led on my team with it being the IT team. But then what became more apparent was across curriculum, the other tutors who had then got to embed all these skills didn't have the skills, and so we were continually updating CPD, so much so that our service wrote a digital skills strategy. And now the focus is all learners coming into our service have got to meet have certain digital skills, and if they haven't got those skills, then in those classes they will get other skills that's embedded throughout, and it's kind of become the norm now, that it's identified even before they've set foot through into a classroom. We're currently doing blended learning at the moment. We've got some classes face-to-face, some online, and there's a focus to make sure that those online have got those skills, and we've got processes in place that we're supporting them. But likewise, those who come face-to-face, they're still having the same focus, purely to meet the digital skills strategy that we've got in place at the moment.
Thanks, Leslie. I just want to tell people that there's a document that Barnsley have produced where they've kind of identified which skills they would expect to be embedded in which courses, more or less, isn't it, Leslie? And you can see that document on the community of practice, and I know that a lot of people have found it really helpful. So if those of you who are here or watching the webinar are interested, then you can go onto the ETF website and you can find that document from Barnsley. I know also that we've got two other organisations here from Manchester and New City College who are also have done case studies for us, and I know that they got similar experiences to that Leslie's just described. But I'm going to move on very shortly to our next presentation, and hopefully we can hear some more comments on this conversation later. But if anyone has got any more questions for Alex, then please pop them in the chat and she can answer them in the chat. And if we have any more time at the end, we can come back to that. So thanks very much, Alex. It was very, very interesting to hear about your journey. What I want to do now then is to invite the team from Islington Adult and Community Learning Service to talk to us about their experience, and they're going to describe their context, and then they're going to talk to us about their delivery of their EDS course. Okay, David.
Right, so Laurie's going to present our presentation to you. So my one is very short. So the idea was that I submitted a bid because the game relates to ESOL learners. Okay, but I want to do something slightly different because everybody says ESOL learners can't do digital skills. They're low level. However, if you meet some of our ESOL learners, they're very apt at digital skills. They communicate with their family via the internet. They use the internet probably more than many of our other learners. However, the problem is language. So when you're looking at delivering ESOL and digital skills, it's the language that we use. So we try to look at how best we could embed, and deliver EDS in a way that combined the language for ESOL, but gave them the skills as well, because they already had the skills. But what we had to do was show them the English terms, as you would say. So we split the group up into what we had. So Yanupa did our research with the tutors. She's going to give you a piece how that worked, and that was with the learners and how that fed back. And then Laurie's going to present to you the overall project and some of the PowerPoints that we use for our learners and give you some ideas. So over to Yanupa.
Thank you. Thanks, David. And thank you to the team for having us on. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Malupa and I am one of the ESOL teachers at ACL Islington. I was also the primary researcher for the project. So as David explained, the project was based around the low-level learners of ESOL plus EDS, essential digital skills, and developing their digital skills in conjunction with ESOL. David mentioned that language was a big area. So we decided as a team that the project will be delivered as a short course, and we chose the term quite carefully as a course so as not to intimidate the learners and not to make them feel alienated that they're participants on a project. And this ties in with the very value of Islington Council and our nurturing nature of dealing with the learners. So we chose the project to be delivered as a short course, and that of course reinforced the values. We chose the learners quite carefully. They were taken from low-level ESOL classes and they were split up into two groups. And the two groups were they were known to have the greatest need of developing essential digital skills. So the ESOL team decided to liaise and collaborate with the digital skills curriculum team so that we can design the course and meet the essential digital skills and tailor it to our low-level ESOL learners. And what we very quickly realized that yes, they were using applications, WhatsApp, and they were using various digital apps, but there were gaps in the knowledge as to why they were using it and what it meant and where they fit in conjunction with those gaps. And so very quickly what we identified were apps such as Zoom, so that they can participate in the online lessons, so as to include them to learn throughout the pandemic. We also developed their knowledge in apps such as WhatsApp and browsing the internet and deepening their knowledge on what the internet means and the various language, as David mentioned earlier on. And in addition to that, we also developed their emailing skills. So again, as Alexander mentioned, it was to embed the digital skills and to develop their English at the same time. Now, what we very quickly found as part of our findings were that it was best delivered by ESOL teachers. And the reason for it was that they were in the best stance and they were in the best position to really understand the cohort of our ESOL learners, understand their challenges, and also use the expertise that ESOL tutors have to develop their digital skills. And language featured a big part. So initially, as we essentially were there to lead them on and to progress them into EDSQ, actually what we found was that we had to scale the project right back to the bare basics and focus first on the terminology, as David mentioned. And so what we learned was that actually not to underestimate or overestimate the knowledge gaps that learners have at very bare basic levels, which was just vocabulary, because then we can plug those gaps. And actually there was a link that the learners were drawing from the gap of their knowledge and then the applications they were using and the devices they were using to access these access points and the education from. So that's what we very quickly learned, that we shouldn't underestimate or overestimate the knowledge gaps of the learners. And what we also found was that actually a short project was not fruitful enough. It was an exploratory approach, us delivering it over 4 weeks, but actually that we needed a lot more time so that we can utilize the program, and also it allows the learners time to develop those skills and to apply those skills as well. And actually that's been a great finding, because as David may explain, we are now looking to dovetail from the research project and actually expand it onto other curriculum areas, namely English, although maths isn't on board at the moment, but hopefully in the future it will be. So overall, it's been a successful project. Learners were able to demonstrate their skills at the end of the 4 weeks, and actually they covered great distance, and they were able to demonstrate these skills. So it was a successful project. I think if we had more time, we would have been able to expand it a lot more. It did feel like a torrid love affair, and we are now looking to expand it further. So yes, so it's been an interesting project. It was short, it was sharp, it was snappy, but an exciting one and a fulfilling one nonetheless. And we are looking to expand it further. So thank you very much. My name is Nilufer, and I have just given you an overview of our project. I will now hand over to my colleague, Laurie, who will be talking about the project and the materials in much more depth.
Thanks, Nilufer. Hi, everyone. My name's Laurie Lawrence. I'm an ESOL tutor at ACL. I'm just getting this. This is the whole project team from David and the collaboration that was going on under his guidance between the various curriculum areas. So I came in as an ESOL teacher with a few digital skills that I wanted to share with the team. And it just all seemed to come together very well at the right time in the middle of the pandemic for the learners to get some valuable vocabulary, some valuable digital skills that they could take further into their everyday lives. Essentially, we started off with what was very much a very straightforward linear PowerPoint that, as the weeks went on, it started to highlight a need for a more interactive approach to delivering the topics. And so it became this rather wieldy, as a PowerPoint usually is, resource that was split into several topics: general info, devices, apps as a whole, internet, and a few summative questions just to ensure teaching and learning was taking place. And each of those larger units were then split into several subunits. And that allowed us to create quite a large resource, but it made it very user-friendly. It made it, we could jump around without the learners having to wait. We only had a short time with them for each session. So as their questions came up, it made revisiting the different topics almost like reading a book, quite easy. So we always started off with this overall, giving them a feel for what essential digital skills we're covering. Devices, apps, kept it very visual for the learners because we had quite a few pre-entries that were started with us, and they all got the terminologies. I think one thing that stood out for me was learners saying that they felt now they could go in and get their devices repaired because they actually understood the language that the potential repairer would be using with them. They didn't know what devices were. Apps, what is an app? You know, they've now made the connection, the programs, the software, and they're quite happily using that language, even at pre-entry levels. So here we go. So I'll give you a taste of each of the units that we actually produced. At device level, we looked at, let's get down to devices. At device level, we had subtopics such as operating systems, something vital for the learners to be aware of, the differences between the phones. Why is that one called an iPad? Why can't I just go to the one place to download my apps? So it worked. It was a very productive, chatty groups. They all used the target language. There you go. Giving them lots of visual analogies between the various operating systems, and that they all, in the end, at the end of the day, provide the same service. It's just how it's done. So having this very adaptable, very user-friendly resource, we could jump from one topic to another, revisit the topics. It was very learner-led. So if we felt that they weren't quite, there was an obvious gap that they hadn't quite got the topic, we could easily jump back, having this kind of system in the background, this kind of PowerPoint in the background. And it took away that linear kind of delivery that's typical of PowerPoint. And the hyperlinks made it something that we could move around as the learners displayed their understanding or not. So there you go, these are the subtopics under the internet, using search engines. What a web page is about. And having it this way meant that we could actually sort of stretch and challenge the lower level learners, because it was quite interesting to see how much they actually did know, even though they couldn't actually verbalize, but they could recognize that they've encountered these kind of topics before, and they could now put a name to it.
So, Laurie, what was the website that they were using? The learners were using a different search engine, weren't they? And we hadn't heard of it before, and it came from China or something, wherever it was. And it was sold in the Middle East, Far East, wasn't it?
I think it was a Turkish learner who was using a Turkish browser.
Not yet.
I can't remember the name of the browser.
They were using one, and we were saying, no, I use this browser. And they used this other, it's a Turkish browser, whichever one it uses. And it was actually, and we found out it was used across other areas of, other countries where that was their main browser.
Yes.
So you knew how to search, but not through Google, and not through that, because it wasn't one they used. So he searched other ways.
Yeah. But it was really interesting to learn that, because here in the UK and in the West, we use Google, we use Google, that's our browser by default. So it was really interesting it was almost like an intercultural communication bridge. So it was a really interesting project to learn from the learners as well.
Sharing.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a fantastic resource, Laurie, and it's really amazing to see all the different things and ways that you've used this PowerPoint. I'm sure you've got more to share with us, but I'm going to just ask you to pause there if that's okay, because I think there may be people with questions and comments, and we've got a really good flavour of the work that you've been doing in Islington. It's really interesting to see. Now, I know that everybody will be thinking, oh, how do I get my hands on that PowerPoint? And we've discovered, have we not, that it's not so easy, because it's such a fantastic thing. It is huge, really huge. So we're working on finding a way that we can share it, because Islington have very kindly agreed that we can put it out one way or another on the community of practice, and we're just looking for a way to make that possible, because at the moment the file size is holding us back, but we will get it to you, I'm sure, to those of you who are attending today, and hopefully it will be on the community of practice before too long. So thanks very much, everybody from Islington. It was really, really interesting to hear what you were doing, and the fact that you'd researched and figured out which teachers were best placed to teach various things, and also the way that you covered such a lot of ground in such a short time. It's amazing to hear. Have we got any actual questions for Islington directly? Because I know there's 1 or 2 comments I'd like to bring in from other people as well.
There are some comments about how fantastic the resource is and how comprehensive, rather than direct questions. I think people are blown away with how effective that PowerPoint could be.
I think so too. I'm sure that there will be questions that will come up, so I'll just talk a little bit more, and I want to just ask Andy Greaves, who's from New City College and was one of our other case study organisations, if you'd like to comment on where they're up to and what they're doing at the moment. And specifically, I know that a lot of organisations have found that going straight into EDSQ from a digital skills perspective, not necessarily from a language perspective, has been a lot for a lot of learners, and there's been a lot of comment suggesting that there needs to be preparatory courses and something lower than the entry 3 level. And so I think people have found that they have been using RAPA courses, non-accredited courses, to do that. And I know that Andy's just exploring that at the moment at New City. So if you'd like to unmute and just tell us briefly about your experience, Andy, that'd be great.
Yeah, no, thank you. And thank you, everyone. The presentation has been brilliant. It's been so interesting because, you know, it resonates so much with what we've been doing, what we've been learning as an organisation. So just like everything that's been said today has been brilliant. Last year we used the E1, E2 Digital Skills for Life qualifications with our ESOL learners. That were probably on E1, E2, E3 ESOL. We had about 350 learners that did that, and that was still a funded qualification. So now it's no longer funded. We're using the RAPA, but it's in page 39 of the AEB guidelines for this year. It's now a legal entitlement for non-regulated learning for RAPA courses below E3 are also part of the legal entitlement. Sorry, that was probably a better way of saying that. So it's they will fully fund non-regulated learning for learners as long as we have assessed them and identified the learner cannot undertake the E3 or level 1 provision. So if they're below E3, so it's definitely worth using that. So there's a set of RAPA codes with RAPA hours funding bands, and we're kind of pitching ours at a similar level actually to the EDS. We're doing a 10-week kind of 10-week preparation for E3 course essentially. A majority with our ESOL learners, and yeah, and I'm probably from a more creative digital curriculum background, but I'm actually teaching the ESOL learners, so I'm getting stuck in and doing some of that. So it's going to be interesting to see how that develops.
Lovely, thanks, Andy. And Leslie says that they're using these this next year in Barnsley as well, so this year, so that's good, and a lot of nods. A very quick question to Laurie, I think, from Danielle. Sorry, I'll just read that. I think maybe Nilupa's answered it. It was about engaging learners more fully. So was the PowerPoint, the resource that you used, Laurie, did that engage learners, your ESOL learners?
Oh, very much so. I mean, it's been quite interesting, the number of them that have actually joined onto discrete digital skills provision. They feel empowered, informed enough now to join the regular cohort as straight digital skills learners. It was a really great project. It generated a lot of conversation and target language gathering, which, yes, it worked. Great.
As I say, I'm sure that people are very anxious to get their hands on it, and we will do our best to make sure that we're able to share that. So just before I'd just like to put a little bit more context around the case studies, to remind everybody where they can go to find out a little bit more about it. And then we will draw the presentation to the webinar to a close.
Nilupa's got something to add to that.
Beg your pardon, sorry. Okay, Nilupa, please do, go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks, Mary. Yes, I just wanted to quickly tell everyone about data collection. So what worked really well for our project was having an additional researcher on hand to collect the data, because at low-level ESOL, with low-level ESOL learners, the onus and the focus is on delivery and focusing on the vocab and the skills. So it worked really well by having me or a researcher to collect the data, which was done independent of the course and of the lesson itself. So how we collected the data was through focus groups, So I attended the session discreetly and just monitored and observed and asked questions afterwards. And this was done via an additional session, and also by interviewing the learners, so that we had 2 case studies to feed back on. And it enabled the learners to express their views and to give us valuable feedback, which we then used to draw on, and which informed the research and the findings. So that worked really well. So that freed up the tutor to just focus on the delivery and the teaching and the learning to take place without having to worry about data collection for the project. So it was nice to have that process. We embedded all of those things and we were able to manage it within the very short space of time that we had.
Yes, it sounds a really interesting and effective model. So thank you for sharing that. I'm very conscious of the time. I know that not everyone is able to stay on and chat, which we would really like to do. But just to say a very big thank you to all of our presenters today from Islington and from Weymouth and from Essex. It's been a really helpful session, and I know that everyone will have learned a lot from it. So if I could just remind you that if you want to find out more about our ETF case studies, and there are 10 altogether, you will be able to find them on the Enhance digital teaching platform and on the ETF website and in our community of practice, and that is where we will be sharing the resources for today, but we will also send out to attendees of the webinar a link to the recording and also to the slides. So just to say thank you also to all of our participants who came today. Please do check out our events page and come along to some more EDS events, because it's good to see from the comments that people that have been involved now in delivering EDS for maybe 2 years are still really enthusiastic about it. And one of the things that I think came over from all our speakers today also was their passion and commitment to teaching essential digital skills. So thank you all very much and goodbye.